Welcome to the Flore Fantasy and Sci-Fi Lore. Today we are talking about the 3 laws of robotics, why Asimov created them, and how they have been adapted by almost every robotic story since, and how that tool was to make these stories more interesting and more complicated rather than just Frankenstein turns on his master. So, if that is what you're interested in, we will be talking about how that influences Terminator and impacts that, as well as we are currently talking about Terminator Zero. So, that is what you're looking for. This is the episode for you. Roll the intro.
Do you remember the first story that was so spellbinding it drove you to break the rules and stay up all night to keep reading, keep watching, keep playing? So good, you forgot your life and lived there?
So good. The moment it ended, you asked yourself, what next?
Welcome to the Flore. Our goal is to take you back, take you deeper, to explore and understand more, and relive that childlike wonder.
Join us as we dive deep into humanity's greatest stories, no matter how they are told, through books, movies, television, even games.
One of us does an in-depth research on the topic. One of us is familiar with the topic.
And one of us knows nothing. So the right questions will always be asked and addressed for anyone coming into the topic, regardless of how much you know.
Enjoy another world, another adventure, another spellbinding story. Join us on the Flore.
Today I want to do a quick little one-shot on the 3 laws of robotics. Coming from the man who chose his own birthday, grandfather of science fiction, the one who brought stories of robots beyond the Frankenstein tales of beware your own creations. With over 500 books published, Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. This first gets published in 1942 in a short called Runaround. At first he was publishing in a magazine, so this is one of those in the magazine that will eventually put into iRobot, which is kind of the breakout and kind of the basis there, right?
Do you know the year on iRobot?
1950, so 8 years later.
1950, okay. So I just saw a trailer for a movie called Subservience, which is another android, servant turns dangerous. And I was like, how many times are we going to tell this story? And yet, Asimov is kind of like where it really starts. And like people just keep retelling his story over and over and over again. I can't even comprehend how many times this story's been told.
Well, before Asimov, all the stories with robots they just simply turn on their creator. It's referred to as like these Frankenstein stories.
Okay.
Is that every time somebody makes the robot kills them. Beware your own creation stories. And Asimov is the one who expounded them to be more interesting. It's not just you build it and you die. He had more of a complex look at things. And
if you've read The Expanse, it is a story of aliens unlike anything I have ever read or heard about before. It is very different. And maybe I'll even drop a few spoilers here if you're very interested in checking it out, right? Like, this is an alien species that doesn't find humanity and try to take them over. This is an alien species that has essentially created an organism to make roads. And it is building a road where humanity is. It's not intentional. All of the dark and nefarious things that occur with the aliens are because of humans trying to turn it into a weapon, trying to turn it into something it was never meant to be. And I found that so interesting. And they have just released a new series. And once again, we are encountering an alien race that is just very different than anything we are used to seeing in sci-fi.
They're doing another season of Expanse?
No, this is different world, different series. Mercy of the Gods is the first book that they just barely released. And it does start with aliens invading and taking over humans, but as we get to know the alien race, and the way they think and everything. It is still just very different than other creatures, we've encountered. Sci-fi aliens a lot of times are just very cut and dried. They want to take over, but these two writers, they really do just have a very different way of thinking about an alien species.
Right, and I think that's what Asimov did for robots.
Yes, and that is what Asimov brought to robotics. Like, we had constant stories, Megan, subservience, just like, it feels like it's just on a loop, right? Like, robots go one of two ways. We fall in love with them, or they try to kill us.
Yeah, those are two very standards.
It was Asimov who thought much deeper about this.
And his basis for that is the 3 laws. So I'll go over those now. First law, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come into harm. Law 2, a robot must obey orders given to him by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Third law, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict. However, later on, he did go on to write what he calls Law 0, and he puts this above all others. A robot may not harm humanity, or by inaction allow humanity to harm. These are his 3 laws, and they were storytelling devices, right? So this very first one, Runaway, they go to Mars looking for a couple people. They've got a robot they're going to send down to go look for them. They're waiting for the robot to come back, and he's not coming back. He should have been back by now. They have to send another robot to go find that robot, figure out what's happened. So the company who bought this robot valued this robot a lot. And so they're like, let's bump up the priority of protecting itself equal with level 1. Right, so that it didn't break, right? They didn't want to have to pay to replace or repair it. But this made it that it couldn't put itself in danger to obey what it's been.
To protect
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Right, so he's just kind of glitchy, He's described as drunk.
He's described as drunk.
Yeah, they're like, he seems like he's drunk. He's just kind of staggering back and forth between, I need to do this. Oh, that's dangerous. I need to do this. Oh, that's dangerous.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so they didn't override. They just put 2 directives, and it just flips the switch back and forth between the 2 when it can't decide.
Because one doesn't take priority, right? And so this is how you create doing stories. It's like, how do you mess these laws up that we get an interesting story coming out?
In the Xenoverse, we definitely see robots that don't have the 3 laws of robotics. It seems like the people are told the robots have these laws to keep you safe, but the reality is the robots have one objective.
A prime directive.
The company's interests are priority, and you see this time and time again, and that creates times when the people are valued because it needs them to do things for that, and times when the people are not valued because that's not in the best interest of the company.
So something that really interesting that happened after Isaac Asimov released these laws of robotics and was writing stories with them and everything is other writers started to adapt it. Sometimes it'd be openly say, yes, this is part of my story. Sometimes it was just kind of inferred. It's not directly stated, but it's in the background. But even more interesting is people got used to that kind of a story and would assume that from the get-go as the audience that the robots already have.
Yeah, so the 3 laws of robotics are picked up so often that it's assumed that all robots in all stories live by these 3 laws, and it's not necessarily true.
Which I think is a very interesting phenomenon to happen to stories. Find out it's a robot, 3 laws, I'm going to assume it does until I see that it doesn't, right? And like you were saying, in Alien, they out prime direct. The interests of the company is the first law. but then we kind of assume they have the other laws.
Well, and like they in Romulus, they even talk about it, be like, hey, they can't hurt people. It seems like the people believe that the robots have at least these kind of 3 laws in place. Whereas Weyland-Yutani's like, no, they do what we want.
You know, in the first Alien, he turns on Ripley like out of nowhere. Everyone who watches it for the first time, you're like, did I miss something? Why is he trying to kill her right now? What's happening? Really comes out of left field. I think Weyland-Yutani put them in there softly. It's not a solid thing. One of the sneaky things he was actually doing with these 3 laws of robotics was these were 3 laws for humanity. Don't hurt other people. Protect your own existence. These were things that he thought would create a utopia. If half the population was robots and obeyed these laws, right, it would influence us, create this utopian world. And eventually he'll get around it. But that was kind of a sneaky thing he was doing with the laws of robotics. But one of the funny things is people who are working in robotics and AI don't use these laws of robotics.
They're just narrative. No one ever picked them up for real.
Well, they're ethical things, right? So if you break it down, you've got to define, okay, what's a human and what's harm, and at what point does it fall out? So now you've got to identify this thing that our minds does just fine, but trying to tell rocks how to identify what's a human. Okay, let's say somebody dies. They're no longer human. And, oh, wait, look, we can revive people. How long should the robot work to try to revive somebody? We also get the ethical question, very popular in these days with our self-driving cars. Giving the self-driving car, put it in a position where it's either going to kill a bunch of people on the street, or it can crash the car and it'll kill the people in the car.
Right.
This is ethical questions we're asking a machine to make for us. And that's kind of what these laws were being very general about. But now that we have these self-driving cars, that's a bigger question. However, what I've heard with this is who's going to buy a car that will kill.
Right. You know, I've heard a lot of people talk about the idea of self-driving cars, and they were like, even if we have the data to prove that these are 90 times safer than human drivers, the fact that humans will die no longer controlling the car is kind of like unacceptable to anyone. Unless we have 100% safety, there are some people who will never be okay with it, even though it may be infinitely more safe than we have now. There will still be moments when there will be a crash and humans will die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the world is just that big. I mean, there's 8 billion of us. But I think one of the things is maybe if you look at the Roomba, right? These were some of the earliest, robots in homes. The Roombas were not taught not to run over your cat. Rather, your cat had to learn not to get run over by the Roomba.
Uh-huh. Or if you're a cool cat, you learn how to ride it.
It's so crazy. So many cats have learned to ride Roombas.
I'll sit on it and it'll take me around.
Like you figured they would be afraid of it and everything, but no, the cat's like there are countless videos. The cat's just like, oh, this will take me places. They sit on it and just ride it around.
My favorite is the cat one where 2 cats having a stare down, and the Roomba's coming up behind one of them, and he reaches his leg back and turns the Roomba without even breaking eye contact with the cat he's having a stare down with.
Like he knows the Roomba. He's familiar with this machine.
Just push it that way and it'll go that way. Leave you alone.
Yeah, so I thought that would just, within this, the fact that in reality we don't, because the Roombas were not taught to avoid your pets and everything. Rather, the pets had to learn to adapt to the machine.
Mm-hmm. Because the Roomba was built to find out the dimensions of your space.
Yeah, and so I do think it's interesting. We have these laws of robotics that are, they come from narrative, right? They don't come from engineers. But their idea is that this is how we design the robots to work with us. But if we look at the real world, we don't do that. We adapt around the robots. I think there are Amazon warehouses where they have the little bots grab boxes and stuff like that. And in those warehouses, they just took the people out. Be like, don't mess with the machines, like get out of their way so they can do their.
Get them out of there.
Yeah. Just interesting to see how that's played out very differently. Is that we have adapted around the machines to let them do their thing, as opposed to us making them adapt around us.
I think we see this a lot with technology. Early computers, sitting at a desk individually have to adapt how to use the machine. Machine doesn't intuitively know how to work with us. We have to learn how to work with it.
I even remember way back in grade school taking typing classes, constantly learning how to use the machine. Instead of the machine being designed for me to use it, I have to learn how to use the machine. This was one of the things that Apple, or at least Steve Jobs, really tried to bring into the industry, is designing the machine for us instead of us learning to use the machine.
Working on the interface.
And that's the whole idea of intuitive design, right? What is the natural way you want to do this, right? Like the idea of just dragging your finger across the screen to turn the page, because that's how real books work. It was an intuitive design. Instead of you learning to be like, oh, if you click this little button here in this symbol, that will turn the page and you'll learn that. It's just be like, how would you do this if you weren't interacting with the machine? Let's have the machine do that. So I think that was a very innovative approach in trying to get the machines to adapt to us instead of the other way around. Because like you said, like that's how we have been working with machines forever. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have been learning how to use the machines we build. And it's not until we get Apple and intuitive design that we start saying, hey, why don't we make the machines adapt to us instead?
Yeah, I mean, even John Connor, the machine started to time travel and he had to start fighting them on multiple timelines. He had to adapt to the machine. Anyways, I just wanted to cover the 3 laws of robotics. How big of an influential it is on modern sci-fi.
All right. Well, hopefully that'll kind of help you prepare for Terminator. Definitely a moment where they said, no, we're not going to do these laws.
Terminator is the Frankenstein story. The creation will destroy us.
I think I'll need to go back and watch Terminator 2, but I imagine if we were to erase all of the Terminator stuff that is now, and James Cameron was to sit down and write his Terminator story, I imagine the journey to Skynet would be very different now. And I do wonder what would have been like if Skynet begins with the 3 laws of robotics and it decides it doesn't want them. How does it get around that, right? Like, I guess, maybe one thought I would have is be like, what if Skynet decides that it cannot violate the 3 laws of robotics, but it can transform humans into what could be classified as a different species. Therefore, it could eliminate these creatures because they're not humans anymore, right? So maybe then Skynet engineers CRISPR, right? This is it engineers a CRISPR that will alter human DNA enough that Skynet will no longer classify us as human.
I think there are viruses that will change your DNA.
Yes. Well, that's what a CRISPR is, right? They create a virus that changes specific DNA.
I thought that was more of a individual clippy thing, not a viral thing, but I couldn't be wrong.
So they can set it up different ways to transmit the CRISPR. I don't know if it's an enzyme or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And then John Connor, right? What he figures out is how to make people back into humans.
What are we doing?
And they're like,
making people again. Yeah, no, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Like he's like, maybe like on his little radio, he tells people, be like, hey, if you can get these chemicals and combine them and then inject that, it will shift your DNA back to being human enough that Skynet can't target you, right? And then the big fight is gathering up these materials and be like, you've got to limit your exposure to these things because this is how Skynet dehumanizes you.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to get access to these. And that then becomes the big fight of the resistance, because once you're human, you can walk into Skynet just executing Terminators, and it can't do anything until it can dehumanize you again.
Ooh, I like that, Joe. That would be good. That's good and fresh. Good and fresh. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yeah, you have to like constantly trying to re-antidote yourself because you got exposed again. And
Yeah,
you're already in
because
dangerous
it's trying to
territory.
expose you. It's like, don't come in here. Don't come in here with your human.
Don't come in here, be a human.
Like, we tried to get rid of you guys. But yeah, like, and it changes the chess game with Skynet and humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to keep your DNA altered enough that it can violate its laws.
Well, not violate its laws, right?
Right, yeah, not violate its laws, yeah.
But either way you look at it, it doesn't matter. Yeah, no, I think that'd be really good. I could easily see that being we could do a role-playing game of that one, sets you in the future and make that your dynamic. I think that'd be really fun.
All right, thanks for joining us on the floor. Let us know your thoughts on the 3 laws of robotics. Maybe some of the best stories you've encountered about this dynamic, right? We fall in love with the robots rise up and kill us, and the complex relationship between those that have these 3 laws.
Yes. Or if you have a favorite robot, you can tell us your favorite robot. I want to know.